Hello, and thank you for joining us today for episode 29 of The Download, Tech Talks by the HPCC Systems community for the HPCC Systems community. And we're very excited today to have one of our intern editions where you get to hear some of the exciting projects that our interns worked on over the summer. So first, some housekeeping. Please do share. Let others know that you're here with us today. Use the hashtag HPCC Tech Talks, and also ask questions. We will answer as many of them as we can following each speaker, and also look for the polls. We'll have those throughout the presentation, and we're interested to hear what you say. So if for some reason you can't see them, exit the full screen mode or refresh your screen. And certainly we welcome your feedback. We would love it if you would rate us and leave us a little bit of feedback at the end of your time here today. And visit our website for information following the event. We've got a section on our Tech Talks where you can see all of our past presenters and all of our past topics. So please visit there. And if you would like to be one of our featured speakers, we would love to have you. Email us at techtalks@hpccsystems.com. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to hand everything over to my colleague, Trish, for our community update.
Thank you, Jessica. Hello, everyone. So I wanted to give a quick recap of our 6th annual Community Day event, which took place October 15th and 16th in Atlanta, Georgia. Some high-level stats here pretty much sums it up. Just like in previous years, it was well attended with over 200 people across our academic and industry communities, which includes our own LexisNexis Risk Solutions and RELX colleagues. And as the day went on, our live stream audience grew on our YouTube channel, and as of now, we're very pleased to see that the event playlist has nearly 1,000 views. So be sure to check the event page, which you can access in the attachment section of this Tech Talk to watch a playback of any of the recorded sessions. So we kicked off the event with a big data music workshop taught by our very own Bob Foreman, which also was well attended and received some great reviews. And this particular topic might be one that we may repurpose at future events and hackathons and workshops. I think just rock and roll and ECL seem to be a good match, so stay tuned. And once again, we are very thankful to our sponsors of the event, Dell Technologies, Infosys, Datum Software, and Kforce for all your support and in making the event as grand as it was. So a special thanks again to our speakers, all shown here, who contributed to an action-packed agenda covering a wide variety of talks and breakout sessions. We kicked off the day with our strongest advocate, Flavio Villanustre, with his opening keynote, and ended it with a bang with the lovely Jessica Lordy unveiling our new and improved HPCC Systems website. And also as part of the event, we held our 4th annual poster competition, which new this year. We were really excited to open it to our international community, where we had 5 students presenting over Skype, in addition to the 8 participants in the room. And let me just say that these posters were a huge hit throughout the 2-day event. They were all on display in our new interactive expo area, and as I was running from here to there, I heard a ton of comments from multiple people just on how unique and compelling these posters were. So a huge thanks to all of our participants and judges who took part in the event. And congratulations again to this year's winners, all shown here on the slide. Fabian Fehr from Humboldt University Berlin, he was our Community Recognition Award recipient, and he's just been someone who's been a longtime supporter and contributor of research in our community. And to Claudio Amaral, our David Kahn Ambassador Award recipient, who's greatly expanded our presence in Brazil, working with industry and universities there. And of course, our poster winners. First place, Robert Kennedy from Florida Atlantic University for his GPU-accelerated neural networks on HPCC systems. And second place winner, Alyssa Messner from Wayne State University for her work on exploring co-occurring mental illness and substance use disorder, leveraging the platform. And our third place winner from Kennesaw State University, Danel Zuvik, on his poster explaining how HPCC systems is used in unsupervised log-based anomaly detection. So congratulations again to all our winners, and I can't wait to see how next year will top. Okay, so some of the highlights that were covered throughout the day. You know, we took a walk back in memory lane, celebrating the 20th year of the HPCC Systems platform and how it evolved, and then touched on many topics where the platform is headed. You know, introducing new innovations like ECL Cloud IDE, Tumblr, an improved data patterns bundle, more dashboards and visualizations to help integrating with IoT devices much easier. We touched on additional algorithms and advances in our machine learning library, including the text vectors and clustering methods. And all of these capabilities are just, you know, we're trying to build into the platform to make the life of our users easier. And in fact, I think Flavio even closed his keynote by saying, HPCC systems, we code so that you don't have to. So stay tuned for more news about these features and how you can leverage them. And as mentioned earlier, Jessica did the official ribbon cutting of our newly redesigned website that includes different language translations, more focused messaging surrounding our data lake solution. So if you haven't seen it, go take a look at hpccsystems.com. The new look is amazing, clean, and easy to navigate. So well done to Jessica and Sharon and the website team. And last but not least, as you can see here, the robots were back, and not only better than ever, but more awesome than ever, in my opinion. I tell you, the two robotics teams at American Heritage School and NSU University School do not disappoint. They work so hard, and each year they come back with something jaw-dropping than the year before. So we're really proud of our partnership with them and so impressed with all the students, and I can't wait to see what they come up with next. But in the interest of time, you know, this slide just does not do justice of all the great talks and demos that day. So I encourage you all to check out the playlist and slides of all the recordings to catch up on anything you may have missed. And again, you can find that link in our attachments section of this webinar. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Consulting Business Analyst and Internship Program Manager, Lorraine Chapman, who we are so very glad to have back and with us today. She'll be giving an update on the latest platform release, along with other related updates, and then moving on to introduce today's speakers who interned with us this past summer. So Lorraine, my friend, over to you.
Thanks, Trish. So yes, I'm going to start with a bit of an update on what's been happening on the platform. So as you can see, the current gold release is 7.6.8, and you can download that now along with the release notes and visit the Red Book for more information that might be of use to you when using this release. So I thought I'd just do a very sort of quick walkthrough of what we have included in the 7.6 series so far. There are a number of notable new features and improvements over quite a wide range of areas. We've made a number of changes in Roxy. So the UDP layer has been refactored to help with the control of UDP packets, and users now have the option of using a completely new third-party UDP transport, Aeron. To support and simplify cloud deployments, Roxy topology changes can now be made while Roxy is running, which allows for the auto-scaling of clusters. We are also now supporting the use of host names instead of resolved IPs, which can fluctuate in cloud environments. There's a number of security improvements, including the cryptographic standard library ECL module, which allows ECL developers to safeguard sensitive data using industry standard cryptographic algorithms. And there's more information available about this feature on our blog page, There's a link on the slide here that you can click on later to go and visit that page. There's also a new restricted file property that's been introduced, which may only be accessed by signed code and by users that have code signing privileges. At system level, we now generate environment-specific and random SSH keys during installation, and access between connections that don't share a DALI is now controlled by whitelist. So any connections that don't share a DALI must be specifically included in the whitelist. In the area of embedded languages, Python 3 is now the default as opposed to Python 2, although the plugins are included for Python 2 as well. But a word of caution here, users should only enable one of these versions, since the libraries export the same symbols, and then if both are enabled, it can cause some unpredictable results. There is an entry in the Red Book for 7.6 which talks about this and also explains how to change to use Python 2 if you need to. It's now much easier to use Python 2 with HPCC systems now that the dependencies are included in the manifest. And in the Spark area, we now support version 2.4.3 and also Data Source API version 1. Trish has already mentioned data patterns, and this feature has been improved in the 7.6 series. There's also now a data patterns tab on the logical files page in ECL Watch, which allows you to analyze a logical file to see a summary of the patterns found for each of the columns in the logical file. There's also a new work unit analysis tool that has been introduced. This examines work units to highlight potential issues. So, for example, it can show you how skews are affecting the execution time, or it may even be able to suggest a more suitable join to improve the performance. There are other usability improvements in ECL Watch, including copy maximize buttons throughout, download to CSV for selected items in a grid, and a mine button, as in these are mine, for viewing the list of your own work units. And as Trish has already mentioned, we now have documentation available in Brazilian Portuguese. Don't forget to check our blog for new items. Here are some of the most recent additions. Since I've only had time to provide the edited highlights of the features and improvements made to the platform today, look out for an upcoming blog from me, which will include some of the things we've talked about today and more, and probably also some features added in 7.4 just as a reminder. And there may also be some blogs coming which are feature specific, written by the developers. So moving on to why you're really here today, which is to hear these two people speak. So today, our speakers are going to present about the projects they completed during their internships with HPCC Systems this summer. They both worked on machine learning projects, but in quite different areas. Hwafu, who is a student from Georgia State University, you can see from his bio that he has accumulated a lot of experience as a software engineer in the past, working over quite a range of different businesses. And Christopher Connolly joins us from North Carolina State University. You can see from his bio that Chris has a great interest in exercise and health, which makes him a perfect choice for contributing to the work of the Athlete 360 project alongside Dr. Vincent Free. So our first speaker today is Hwafu Hu. Hwafu's project focuses on an area which is extremely pertinent to today's world. He's going to interest and maybe even slightly unnerve you as he takes you through the work he has completed, which involves modeling the risk of human behaviors by looking at people's driving habits. So over to you, Hwafu.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Hwafu. Thank you for the introduction of Lawrence and Trish. Today, I want to talk about my project, analyzing telematics data to support the connected car industry. First, let me introduce my background. I have been a software engineer for about 10 years, since 2007, when I was in China. At 2017, I began my master's degree of computer science at Georgia State University. Last year, there was a project about gene analysis of Omega bioinformatics using HPC system with Dr. Meng Han at Kansas State University. This year, I'm an intern and work for NextNexus from August to October. This project is helping the insurance company to customize the price for their clients based on their trading habits. What was the average auto insurance cost in the United States for the year 2016? Here are 4 options. First, $735, 2, $835, 3, $935, 4, $1,035. You will get the answer from my following slides. Here is a brief outline of today's presentation. I will do the introduction and tell you why we need to do such a project, how we do, and what the result we have found in our project. First of all, we all know accidents increase year by year due to more and more cars on the road and a growing population. However, we should note many drivers with good habits are providing with high insurance fees. Some drivers with high risk get the low insurance fee. It's unfair to all of them. For different people, we should provide different price. With more and more data, we should get more value. We can customize the evaluation for all the people. It will best benefit the insurance customers as well as benefit the insurance company. It's well known that accidents increase year by year. From the left chart, you can see the total number of the traffic accidents in the United States increased about 25% from 2010 to 2016, which includes the fatal accidents, injury accidents, and accidents. By the right picture, the average auto insurance fee has increased around 20% from 2008 to 2016 for National Association of Insurance Communities. However, it's not an easy question since we got more and more data from many resources. How to precisely data, how to leverage the pattern of the data is still very, very challenging. We, our HPCC system, are super good at precising the data, provide the value for our customers, such as every insurance company. So here in our project, we developed a one-stop pipeline to precise the driver habit data. Based on this data, we can do analysis to each driver and provide the best model based on the driver habits. Here is the architecture of our project. This project separated to 3 parts: the simulated telematic system, cascade message queued, and the HPCC system. Telematic system will generate hundreds or thousands of threads and zip codes by multiple threads. They will read the telematic data from the data set and deliver the data to cascade message queue separately. After the message is received by cascade message queue, another ECL program and the HPCC system will fetch the data and the cascade message queue, paste and save them to the database. After that, another ECL program will analyze the data and send the results back to our clients. After we have acquired the telematic data, you will begin to the ECL process. It's quite important to understand the meaning of each column in the data set. This will help us to find the key columns for the whole data set. After locating the top columns, through previous steps, start statistic these properties by grouping the key columns. This is a vital point, and the whole process, as is known to all, it's impossible to enhance all the properties in the data set. Therefore, the more time you spend on this step, the less likely deviation the model will be. In the left two charts, the unique column is the device ID, or we can say car ID. The CMT column in the first picture means total driving time for the car. At the center graph, the CMT trip column represents total trips for the car. The AVG trip time column indicates the average time per trip per car. The primary key for the right chart is device ID and trip ID. Acceleration GPS column shows the acceleration based on GPS speed. Acceleration RPM column means acceleration based on RPM. Here, I will introduce two important concepts to our project: hard acceleration and hard brake. Hard acceleration you can see at the left graph, and hard brake you can see at the right picture. As driver events, then more force than normal is applied to the vehicle accelerator or brake system. It can be an indicator of aggressive or unsafe driving behavior. At the very least, this driving habit is wasteful and uneconomic. There is no optical definition to the threshold of hard acceleration and hard brake. Here, I choose the most common threshold to record a hard brake or a hard acceleration, 7 miles per hour per second, or if you will keep the equivalent to 10.2 feet per square second. Here is some graphs from our demo. We process more than 1 million trip data of 10,000 vehicles in a period of 180 days. There will be 4 to 7 trips a day for each vehicle. The extension in the day of all the days is no more than 180 days. Different drivers have different driving habits. After the message are received by Kafka message queue, an ETL program of HPCC system will fetch message data from Kafka message queue periodically and paste these messages to the required format. In the unnecessary data, save them to the data set as graph shows. The following is some result we got from the AWS cloud. Here is one example of our analyzed results. The hard acceleration and the hard brake are the two key features to the car essence. The left graph shows different drivers and their average hard acceleration time per hour. The x-axis means different vehicles. The y-axis means the average hard acceleration time per hour. In the right picture, it presents different drivers and their average hard brake time per hour. The x-axis means different vehicles. The y-axis means the average hard brake time per hour. We can simply get the result that driver 1110 and 1116 are the worst drivers in these 8 drivers. The total trips and total driving hours are the two implement features to the driver habits. The left graph shows different drivers and their total trips. The x-axis means different vehicles. The y-axis means the number of total trips. In the right picture, it presents different drivers and their total driving hours. Depending on the trip data and the threshold, the analyst can help our client to identify the group of bad habits when driving. I developed this data pipeline, data processing of the project to a whole solution from scratch based on the back end as a software engineer. With the support of our HPC team, I got the opportunity to improve the performance of our project efficiently and effectively. Initially, the running time for the data generation, data processing, and data analysis is very, very high. After several times of optimization using multiple threads, decreasing the steps for iteration, change, the running time of data generation, data processing, and data analysis has decreased by 82% to 96%. In summary, our project addressed the problem to customers' price in the insurance industry. Based on the driving habit, we implement a precise data pipeline. We provide the insight into driving habit to model the rates for different drivers. As shared, we provide a comprehensive one-stop solution for the insurance industry. Do you think this model using HPC system may help decrease your insurance costs? There are two options. First, yes, it will help the insurance company to implement their model and decrease the fee for good drivers. Second, no, the model of the insurance company is quite perfect. They will not decrease anymore.
All right. Wafu, thank you so much. That is such an interesting presentation, and I've seen your poster on it and now your presentation, and it's so interesting. So while you take a look at the questions that have come in from the audience, we're going to take a moment to look at your poll questions. Now, the first one we're going to need your help for, Wafu. The question was, what was the average auto insurance cost in the U.S. for 2016? And half of the people picked $935, and the other half picked $1,035. What's the right answer?
Yeah, I think everyone got a right answer. It's $935. You can see it from I remember in the graph, in my graph, there has a lot of the result. You can see the last result is $935. All
right, fantastic. All right, we'll give people a little bit more time to vote on your last poll question on whether they think it will reduce their auto insurance. And let's go ahead and take a peek at the questions that have come in from the audience. If you can take just a second and prioritize those for me.
Oh yeah, the second question is do you think the model using HPC system may help decrease the insurance costs? I'm really asked two answers. First is it will be yes. It will help the insurance company to implement their model and decrease the insurance fees for the good driver. Second is no. The model for insurance company is quite perfect. The insurance fee will not change at all. In my mind, I think both are possible. If you are a good driver and drive very carefully, I think the first one has much bigger possibilities. Yeah.
So it's up to us then. All right, perfect. All right, let's take a quick peek at some of the questions from the audience. So the first one is, as you mentioned, your system can be adapted to other systems. Could you explain a little on how to adopt it into other systems and which kind of projects would be better for the optimization?
Oh, yeah. As I mentioned before, I have all the optimization programs all the similar data sources, no matter the car data, weather data, or plane data, or other complexity data, will be proper to fit for the solution designed to be optimized. In summary, our solution has optimized in the data generation, data processing, and data analysis. At first, it utilized multiple threads to enhance the performance. For generation data, second, it has optimized the string of Kafka message queue. Last but not least, it optimized the iteration and the normalization for extract the key filters and the data analysis. You can see the key filter. This contains high acceleration and heart rate in my project. Every project similar to my project, such as telematics data, smart car data, and other similar projects, could be applied to my solution and optimize them.
All right.
Hi,
thank
Lauren.
you. All right. So let's take a look here at this next question. How much performance have you improved for the whole system?
Oh, good question. The total running time has decreased about 89% compared to initial. Also, we using multiple thread, we using change, and it will increase a lot. And our solution also can apply to other systems such as telematics system, smart car system, and so on.
Okay.
Hello?
It looks like there's another question in here about on data of scale and what the challenge is of working with data on scale.
Can you say it once? Hey, Lauren.
So,
can you say it once?
Yes. So the question is, what is the challenge on working with so much data, with that scale of data?
Yeah. Quite good question. The challenge for our project is it has millions of trips. How to use this data to generate the model? How to extract the key features to our system that relate to the driver habits? How to increase the performance? That's quite challenging to all of us. I simply all the data to extract two key filters. We can know that in our system we have the heart rate and heart acceleration. That's the two key filters to the car accident. That's the key filters I extract.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It looks like there's another question that's come in, Wafu. Just talking about the next steps for this project. So I know you're an intern and your project has ended. But where do you think this project could go?
Oh yeah, I remember that my manager told me that my project will be used by another insurance company and you'll be quite large. They required about 5 million cars per 5 million car trips per week, and you need to connect the data. Is just every day, and the peak is about in 10 minutes. You need to run about. I remember it's more than 1 million of trips. That's quite a challenge. You need to on my system. It can be from the first part. It has a multiple thread. Second, it has clustered. In our demos, we only have about one front end server one backend server and one of the one cluster in our HPC system. All the parts will be enlarged. And for the front end, it will be enlarged to more than about 10 clusters. For the HPC server, it will be enlarged to about 20 clusters to 30 clusters. The third is the Kafka message queue. It at least need to be enlarged to about 10 to 15 clusters.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. It sounds like you've laid a very solid foundation, Wafu. Thank you for that.
Oh,
all right.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you so much for your presentation. I'm going to go ahead and hand everything over to Lorraine to introduce our next speaker.
Hi, thanks. So thank you, Huafu, for that really interesting presentation. There was a lot to take from that. Judging by all of those questions, people found it very interesting, so thank you. So now it's time to introduce Christopher Connolly. Chris is working with a team at North Carolina State University, which is looking into the performance of athletes. And his project that he worked on this summer provides some very interesting insights into the movement and effort patterns of the NCSU men and women's team using GPS data. So over to you, Chris, to tell us what you found.
Yeah, thank you. So I work with the Strength and Conditioning Department over at NC State University. This project is kind of focused in the men's and women's soccer teams, and a lot of the data today is kind of focused around the men's team. But you know, we just had a big kind of need for improvement in terms of how we can collect and kind of bring in and look over the data that we get with our athletes, because you know it's always a big thing that's in demand for the sports field, especially in the collegiate setting. But then there's a lot of places that have the ideas of what they want to do, how they want to do it, but can't get it done because they either don't have anybody with the skill set or don't have kind of the tools at hand to be able to do so. So just to go right off the bat, quick question, what do you think is the most common language for programming in the sports world? Because it is something that is slowly gaining a lot of traction right now, a lot more kind of awareness and desire to be going into this neck of the woods and getting more to the kind of data science and computer science side of what can be done with sports and data collection in that kind of side of the world. So if you could quickly answer that a little bit, and then I'll move on a little bit as that comes through. But just to give an idea of the different sources of data that we're collecting with these athletes, along with the GPS, you know, a lot of it will come in from different spreadsheets that we're collecting from different data sources based on what they're doing on the field with the team, what they're doing in the gym with us. You know, if it's a team like soccer, how they're playing in their games, what are the results of those games, or in other sports, you know, what happens when they go out to go into their competitions and where they're trying to be able to go out there and win, competing against the opposition. Anything that may be bringing in more personal information, so if an athlete has a Fitbit or anything like that, we can get some data through there. And then anything that we use in the gym, so I go over a couple things that we use in the gym to be able to collect data in a couple different ways. So just to give an idea of what the goal is with what we're trying to do is create a system that we can bring all these data sources together and be able to kind of have one big analysis on how everything may be interconnected. You know, if we have all these different pieces of information on these athletes and what is affecting them on a daily basis, how can we bring them into one place so we can make sense of it all rather than kind of chasing each source of data and figuring out what each piece is saying separately rather than being able to bring it into one place and make one big picture of what's happening. So we have our main 4 components that play into that here, where we have our athlete, we have our assessments and ways that we're collecting data with the athletes. We have our kind of reports that are going back to coaches, and ways that we're trying to kind of connect all of our data sources together to be able to make a big analysis and make those reports for coaches. But at the same time, we get a little bit of a added component, which is, how then can we take that another step further and create some deeper analytics that we can start to get more of kind of the bigger long-term messages based on our data. So can we find any trends over time or any sorts of relationship between different variables that may be between different data sources that may give us some insight on how we can expect a player to be feeling or kind of progress over time. So from there, the different sources that we're collecting data from can come in many different shapes and sizes. We have kind of the ones in red here, the ones that will be mostly talked about today, obviously mainly the GPS data, but the other sources are also coming in as well on a pretty regular basis, but they get split into kind of 3 main different data types. The readiness data would be kind of what comes in most regularly, usually on a daily basis, if not 2 to 3 times in a week. And that's giving us an idea of kind of where they are compared to their normal baseline and how that can be affecting them moving forward. So whether or not they're trending up or down from where they normally are, with the questionnaires kind of having a subjective rating based on how they're feeling for that day, or kind of how they are responding to their training. And then from there, using something like ForceX, which is the force plates, NORBOARD, which is the thing you see in the bottom left, that is something that measures kind of a hamstring type exercise. We'll measure force there of output from those muscles, as well as kind of difference from side to side between their legs. And then GymAware, which is the one in the middle there, which will track velocity of kind of the movement of any piece of equipment we're using in the gym. So tracking their speeds compared to where they normally are. Training load data would be more so an objective source that's viewing, how much work that athlete is doing on a regular basis. So training load questionnaires being after every session that they're on the field or in the gym. What are they experiencing during that session? How do they rate their effort and their exertion from that session, or how hard it was? And then the GPS data giving us how much distance is being covered on the field, how high their heart rate was during that session, breakdown of how much work was done during each part of that practice, and then anything that they're doing in the gym during their lifting with the gym session data. Performance data is how we look to try and tie all those pieces together and compare to what actually happens when they go out to compete. But in a sport like soccer or any other team sport, there's a lot of variables that you can't control for that, will determine whether or not they win as a team. So we can't always directly say kind of what the result of for that game is tied to whether or not they performed better or worse. So a lot of these sources here are more so either testing on the field or testing in the gym to give us ideas of kind of physical characteristics that these athletes may be displaying that we can track over time and say, all right, well, from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, you got X amount stronger in this lift, or you ran this amount faster during our sprint testing, you lasted this much longer in our conditioning testing. So we should be able to say that, your physical capabilities to perform out on the field have improved, so chances are you should be able to perform better when you go out to play in a game. So the system that we use here for GPS is called StatSports. So in the middle there, you can see a little pod device that will go on the back of that sports bra looking piece there, and that is what they'll wear to track all of their data during the sessions out on the field during practice or games. In the top left, you can kind of see a little beacon there. We'll use that to track what's happening with the data in real time during their sessions. So you can see that picture of an iPad there. we get an idea of kind of how much distance is coming in, what their heart rate is at the time. Usually the biggest thing there is just make sure everyone's unit is on and working properly, so we're getting the data. But then we're also using this iPad software here to track the drills during those practices, so we can figure out, all right, well, if we got 5 drills during this practice today, where's the start and end of each of these drills, so that when we go back to look at the data, we can make sure that we can see where each of those drills is happening and be able to kind of organize that session appropriately. And then we can kind of look at it in their software from the GPS, get a quick view of the data, make sure all the drills are in the right place. We get the whole session worth of data, and we can kind of use that to help give some context to our raw data moving forward. So just a quick idea of how the system is set up from kind of beginning to end. We're trying to pull this data in from all the different sources. In this case, from this GPS software, we downloaded it from the units to the software, made sure everything looked good. And then from there, we're pulling it from the source to a place where we can kind of locally store all of these data files to then be uploaded to the landing zone through the ECL Watch in HPCC systems. And then we'll spray that data onto the cluster to start being able to kind of take that data, give it the right sort of layout, make sure we can make sense of data, have it set up the way we want it to be, so that when we go to process all this data, everything runs nice and smooth, everything goes to where it needs to go, and then we can be ready to do any of the manipulations to get any of the information that isn't already there. Once we run all of those programs, then we'll be able to spray the data back out so that we can send it to where it needs to go, so that we can start making our visualizations and start to report the data back to the coaches. And right here is kind of the biggest piece for us, is being able to get this sort of process down isn't always the smoothest thing in the sports world. Kind of going back to that poll question, we see 80% of people said that they thought Python was the most common language. For me, that is what I was using for the most part before working with HPCC systems. Definitely allowed me to do much more than what I had been doing before, but sadly enough, in the sports world, there aren't too many people that have a huge skill set on the kind of data science, computer science side. So the people that responded other would be kind of correct here, because the most common thing is pretty much no programming language at all. It's usually most common to just be trying to throw everything you're taking in into an Excel worksheet and trying to make a dashboard on there. Leads to a lot of headaches, a lot of frustration, and a lot of crashing Excel files, because it's not really designed to handle a bunch of data tossed into it and trying to process all of that data and be able to report it back all within an Excel worksheet. So that was kind of the biggest motivation for me to move forward and develop more of a skill set within this field so that I could do more within the sports field. Just to give a quick view of how all the data is kind of flow throughout our project. They mentioned before we have a project called Athlete 360, so that is kind of looking at all this data coming in from these two soccer teams and how it can all kind of play together in order to give us a kind of overall view of everything that will affect these athletes. So the part that's highlighted there and kind of zoomed in on is mostly just the men's half of the data, and then the data that kind of plays into today. So we have our GPS and our raw GPS data coming in. We'll kind of pair that up with a date file, which will give us all the possible dates for a given time period and the types of days that it is compared to where their last game was and where their next game is. So that allows us to kind of categorize each day and be able to compare similar type days together, because if they just played a game the day before and they have another game in a few days, that day after the game is going to be similar to a day after the game on other weeks as well, so we won't want to be able to compare those similar type days together. And in that bottom little red area is the athlete info file, so that is what's giving us kind of what athletes belong to that team, what athletes, what positions those athletes play, what year they graduate, and any unique identifiers for those athletes. So just to give a quick view of how the data comes in and gets organized, we give it just a quick simple view to say, all right, here's all the different data fields, here's what they should be named, and then be able to give them their appropriate data types as we go forward and start to process the data out. And then we'll bring in that athlete ID from the athlete info file so we can start to be able to identify each athlete and connect that to any data source that we may be connecting the different data sources together with. So here we're looking at just a quick spit out from the raw GPS data on the top. The one underneath is what we normally call the summary GPS data. So that is kind of the spit out of some pre-aggregated things from the GPS software, which will give us kind of the names of all the drills that happened, what time they started at, how long that drill lasted, and then some numbers just to give kind of some quick aggregates based on each of those drill periods. But we can also get, again, position that they played, what type of day it was. So trying to layer all these different types of things together onto the raw data so we can give it the context we need to be able to analyze it and make sense of it, to do all of the manipulations that we want to be able to do. So just a quick example of some of the ways that we're trying to take this raw GPS and analyze it, get any information from it that we don't already have. We are looking at a spot here where in the code we're just trying to quickly go through based on name, date, drill name, be able to get a average distance for that particular drill period on a particular day. So in the bottom we can see this is one athlete's data, a couple different days. You can see all the different drills that happened on those days, and then their average speeds and the distance covered during those different drill periods. So here we get a breakdown of each part of a practice, where they covered the most distance, where they were covering the highest average speeds, so we can get an idea of, all right, what part of that practice was the most intense, what part of that practice did they have to do the most work in, and then be able to compare either between days that have similar drills or days that were on that same week or same type of day, and get an idea of kind of what that workload compared between days, between drills. And then another example here gives us an idea of some periods of average heart rates. So the idea of the code above is to be able to make some time periods based on how many rows of data we have. So in this case, we're looking at 1 minute, 3 minute, and 5 minute averages for heart rate. So the code goes through and finds 1 minute worth of data, 3 minutes worth of data, 5 minutes worth of data based on what combination we're doing there. It'll make a window of that many rows. So for 1 minute, we get 10 data points per second. So it'll be 600 rows of data. So it'll find a window of 600 rows. It'll go by a count field. It'll count up to 600. And every time it hits, a new athlete or a new drill or a new date, it'll restart that count to make sure that we're getting kind of a new combination of those rows. But once it gets the right combination, it will move forward by one row each time, finding every possible combination of that time period so that we can make sure that during each drill, over that practice, we're getting the highest possible peak for those average periods. So again, just another view, instead of looking at the distance, we're looking at heart rate and trying to now quantify, if we look at a minute window time, 3-5 minutes, which one is giving us these highest averages, which one of these drills is giving us the highest average heart rate for that time period. So we can say, all right, during this drill, their heart rate was the highest. This is probably where they put out the highest amount of work. But depending on which kind of time period you look at, whether it's 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, a higher 1 minute period, they're generally going to be drills that had a lot more sprint type efforts or a lot more broken up burst speed type efforts. And the 5 minute periods that are higher are going to be more so sustained efforts, probably on a bigger field size during their drills, having to cover more distance, more, sustained effort. So we're going to see higher heart rates for a longer period of time. But if they're not sustaining those efforts, it'll be more kind of spikes in the heart rate data, so we wouldn't expect those shorter drills that have the high heart rate to be able to last for as big of a window of time. But it gives us an idea here again to say, all right, these drills were intense, but this one is more sprint type effort. This one's more consistent, just overall running type effort. A lot more conditioning focus on that drill. And then one more example here would be able to look at how we are breaking it down for different sections of a game. So the coaches came to us at one point after we started making some of these reports for them, and they said, hey, we'd really like to look at the data coming in for a game and be able to break it into different sections. So not only first half and second half of the game, but be able to break down, a couple different sections of the first half and the second half and look at how that kind of progresses throughout. So we made a program here that would go through and break up the different sections of the game into 15-minute segments. So you can see a bucket number there, just giving you the number of that segment during that drill. So first half being broken up into 3 parts, all being 15 minutes apiece. Same thing with the second half, and occasionally we'll get a little fourth bucket there. That's just kind of some spillover time to get in soccer. We'll get time for stoppages and things that will cause that half to be a little bit longer than by design. So we just get that extra bit of time on the end there to give us an idea of kind of what may have happened there as well, but mainly focusing on those first 3 buckets and being able to compare kind of how they progressed through that half of the game, how that compares to the second half of the game, and if they have any overtime periods as well. But again, just be able to look at each section of the game, see if there's any typical trends there between each game, or say, today went really well. The strategy they wanted to hold for this game was, worked perfectly. So let's look back and see how this compares to a couple games that may not have went so well and see what was different. What can we make sure that we can make more consistent or work on to make sure we can have games that are more, along the lines of what we're looking for. And then just another quick idea of when we're looking at a typical practice session, there's many, many different types of drills that may happen given the different type of day it is, how they felt they came off the last game and how they're trying to prepare for the next game. And that can cause for a lot of, confusion in what's actually happening, what the goal of the drill or the session is, and what the coaches really want to be able to see these players do. And even if they have a good idea of what they want to see, it's pretty hard to tell if that's actually what's happening real time when you're watching the practice or you're looking at these, pictures on the drill card for the day. So that's where, our analysis and reporting, being able to break down these sessions like this really helps us make sense of the data and be able to report it back to coaches in a way that will help them understand it a lot more easily and not, just making assumptions on what's happening because it's what they are trying to have happen, but making sure that we can use the data to either back up or disprove that the intent of the session was met so that if it was or wasn't, we can adjust going forward to make sure that, whatever we're trying to accomplish in our practice is what gets accomplished. So as a quick view here on this graph, we're just looking at a breakdown of every game that they have played this year, and then looking at the distance covered during each section of that game. So all the distances from the first half of each game, second half, and overtime periods, of being able to see, during each game, what were the distances that were covered. They'll know which games they performed well and which games they felt like they didn't perform as well, be able to see the differences between those days and see how the season kind of progresses from that standpoint. And we can look at each game from that season and a breakdown from each of those buckets we were talking about before. So in this case, we're looking at a particular day during the second half of the game. This is each player's distance covered for that section of time. So first 15 minutes, second 15 minutes, third 15 minutes, and the extra spillover time. distances covered, being able to compare between different athletes, and we also have the ability to compare between different positions as well. So if we had a couple different athletes we wanted to look at, or a certain position, we can kind of filter that way as well. And then here is just another view to be able to, if there is an athlete of interest, if there's somebody that's, coming back from injury, they're finally ready to go again, and the coaches want to kind of manage their time or see how they kind of run through their time during the game compared to the rest of the team. We can take one particular athlete, put them on the top half of this graph here, and then compare them to the bottom half, which is the team averages. So we can look at, all right, during each of these 15-minute segments and then the extra time at the end, where does this athlete sit compared to the team averages? So in this case, we'd say, all right, well, during the first 15 minutes, it was probably pretty similar, but then during the second and third 15 minutes, this athlete was covering a little more distance than what the team was on average. And then same idea during the second half, this athlete is doing, one of the highest workloads on the team for this particular game. So that can make sure that the coaches can get an idea and, see, all right, this guy did a lot of work, whether or not that was, supposed to happen, and then be able to use it as information to kind of when they're coming off of this game to monitor how that athlete's feeling, make sure he's not too run down or doesn't need any more recovery here before we keep moving forward and training hard going into the next game. So the next steps going forward with this project are really, be able to take the analytics side of it a little bit further. We've started to create some models now to go and observe kind of what those trends look like over time in the case of what we're trying to do at this moment is try and look at the connection of this GPS type data that we've been using with the coaches and how it ties up with the subjective data coming in from their questionnaires, be able to get an idea of any type of relationships or trends that we can find and connect there so that we can say, all right, well, if this is what their training loads look like on the GPS, what can we expect? Or, do we see anything that kind of follows the same idea when we look at how they're responding in their questionnaires and how they say they're feeling? And then, be able to use HPCC systems to accomplish this. And then just as kind of a closing question here, what do you think is the best possible future direction for this project? Because obviously there's plenty of different ways that you can collect data with these athletes and ways that we can then use that data. So, our idea here is trying to be able to take this data and eventually, as we keep moving forward, to be able to use the data, in a way that wasn't possible before, be able to run some testing and build some models that can help us gain insight on the data that will help us, whether it's be able to predict things going forward or be able to anticipate, if we give them X amount of workload on the field today and then give them a lifting session later on, can we expect them to feel a certain way the next day, and how would we have to adjust the next day's worth of training to be able to make sure we're not, pushing the athletes too far or not training them hard enough in some cases. If it's an athlete that doesn't quite play too much in games, we need to make sure that they're not detraining. We need to make sure the guys that start and play a lot during games aren't overtrained. So it seems like a lot of people are on the track of, trying to predict performance, and that's definitely a big part of our goals going forward with this project is, again, just trying to gain all these different views of what is affecting an athlete's ability to perform on a regular basis, and then being able to take that information and see how it connects with all the other pieces that we're collecting. So, again, the models we're trying to build now are going to look at, distances covered in practice and how that relates to their subjective responses. So if we start to see, all right, well, as distances stay high over the course of a week and they start to trend down in the questionnaire because they're getting tired, then we can say, all right, well, if we have, 3 days to go before a game and we do, above what would be kind of average distance covered during that type of session, we can probably expect those athletes to be pretty tired the next day. So if we want to make sure they're fresh enough going into the next game, then we may have to tone it back just a little bit on the training load, or at least for specific players, to make sure that their responses are where we want to see them for when they are moving into the next game, and we know that they're going to feel like they're ready to go. And then, again, not only be able to have that sort of insight into how athletes are feeling, but also be able to, communicate at the best possible level with the coaches to help them understand, how the training will affect how the athletes are ready to perform moving forward, and then be able to help them understand kind of when they plan a practice and they execute it out on the field, is it happening the way they want it to? Are distances that they want to see actually being achieved? If they want a drill to kind of mimic the intensity of a game or be lighter than most other drills, we can use the data to be able to say, all right, well, these expectations for these drills were met or weren't met, and if they weren't, make sure we get some strategies for how we can then move forward and be able to kind of address those changes moving forward.
All right. Chris, thank you so much. This is so interesting. And for those that were at the HPCC Systems Community Day, Chris actually had a demonstration with a curl bar. So we had a little friendly competition, and I think for a little while, Flavio was at the top. I don't know if he had to, pay you or do something to get that top spot, but he was there for quite a while. So it was really amazing to see this in action. All right, let's see. We're going to take a moment to look at the questions from the audience, Chris. So if you could take a look and prioritize some of those, that would be great. So our first question is, what are some beginning models that you plan to test when you begin your next steps with machine learning?
So I kind of went through it a little bit, but to give a little bit more detail, I guess, we're going to be kind of splitting down the distances covered on average for each athlete. So kind of giving it what would be kind of like a Z-score based on that particular athlete and what's normal for them during certain practices, and then be able to say, all right, well, let's make a model that looks at that compared to their subjective responses, so that if we see a trend of, going above normal or below normal in terms of distance covered in a practice, how does that affect their responses on their subjective questionnaires? We haven't quite gotten to the point yet where we've actually been testing those models yet, but that's in the works now. We're putting it together, and we're going to be running the testing on that pretty soon to see what kind of information we find there, and then looking to go forward from there, just kind of testing the different types of responses on their questionnaires. So on the readiness one, they will answer, how sore they feel that day, what is their fatigue level, how did they sleep, sorts of questions like that. So we'll look at how each of those different variables plays against their distance covered, and then probably create a model eventually that looks at kind of all those responses put together and how that affects the kind of accuracy of the model, and how it can predict based on, adding them together, whether or not that makes it better or not. Then we'll be able to kind of take that information and move forward with it.
All right, great. So what other sports do you believe that this type of process can be applied to? And what are some of the other approaches you could take?
Definitely pretty much any sport you can have some sort of impact with. I would say if you're looking at sports that you could have the most impact with, it would definitely be more an endurance-based sport. So if we're looking at something like swimming or cross-country, they have the least amount of external variables that you have to deal with in terms of being able to track their training and even being able to track their performance. You can just look at the times that they achieve in their competitions. And most of the time it's going to be in a pretty controlled environment, whether it's on a track or in a pool. Cross-country courses make it a little bit different because the terrain will be different depending on the course. But at the same time, you can still kind of track performance based on time and other things and have less variables that can throw off your ability to try and predict or see kind of trends over time. So that's definitely kind of the area that you could probably have the easiest impact on. And then other team sports such as soccer, you can have similar impact as well. Something like a basketball or football, you can use GPS pretty similar compared to soccer. So you can have a pretty similar approach when it comes to those sports, because if you can do the same sort of analytics and stuff, then you can be trying to answer some of those same questions, in a more applicable way to that specific sport. And then for this next question, asking for, what are the advantages of using HPCC systems in this project? For us, really, the biggest draw was being able to use it to help us process the GPS data, because when we dive into the raw data from the GPS, again, we're getting 10 data points per second. So it's a lot of data that piles up very quickly. To be able to have 26 athletes in a session, having that for each athlete in that session and getting that every single day, that data piles up very, very quickly. So to have a platform like HPCC systems that can help us be able to process that data really efficiently, be able to kind of put it in parallel across the cluster and make sure that, we're saving as much time as possible. We're doing it in an efficient way so that we're saving time, we're able to get the data processed and ready to be analyzed and reported and back to the coaches as quickly as possible, because the longer it takes us to do that, kind of the less impact that analysis or report will have, because the coaches will say, I need to plan for the next day, or I need to plan for this game coming up. If you can't help me answer some of these questions now and it takes too long, then it kind of loses some of its value. They start to find other ways to figure out what they want to do going forward. So I would definitely say the biggest thing was just having that kind of big data platform that can help us to really efficiently work through the raw GPS data.
Okay. I think Jessica's phone dropped, so this is Trish. I'll just chime in here. I think that you've actually touched on all the remaining questions that did come in. Was there any last words that you wanted to say about your project or contribute, Chris?
Yeah, I think so far it's had a pretty positive impact, especially, we've done the most, obviously, with these soccer teams so far, and the men's soccer team has been much more involved with trying to use the data to have an impact on how they kind of take information in to make decisions based on how they'll plan a practice or prepare for a game. So, the more we've been able to show them that we can do and show them kind of the value on our end of what we're doing, the more they're willing to kind of embrace what we can bring to the table with them. So I think, the more we're able to continue to build this project on this system, the more impact we'll be able to have, the more value they'll see in what we're able to do, and kind of the better outreach we'll have when we get to the point where we're ready to branch out to the other sports. And then it'll be exciting to see how far we can really take these next steps of the project and how that'll all play out once we start to branch out to the other sports as well.
Thank you so much, Chris. This has been a fantastic presentation. We've had two great ones, Wafu and Chris. Thank you both. So I'm going to turn everything over to Lorraine to tell us a little bit more about the intern program, so that if you or someone you know might be interested, you're ready to go.
Thanks, Jessica. I'd like to say at this point that all our interns are mentored while they're working, and often the professors co-mentor alongside our HPCC Systems colleagues. Huafu was mentored by Lily Zhu from LexisNexis and Dr. Meng Han from Kennesaw State University. And Chris was mentored by Raja Sundarajan from LexisNexis and Dr. Vincent Free from NSCU. So I'd like to thank our two speakers for presenting about their projects and the hard work they've put in over the summer. And I'd also like to thank the mentors who supported them during that time. So as you can see looking at the slide, the proposal period for 2020 is now open with the closing date of the 20th of March next year. I urge anyone who may be thinking of applying to get started now, and rather than the temptation of waiting and thinking you'll maybe get to it a little bit later, maybe after Christmas, it's definitely worth starting on your project now. One of the things that we do say to people is if you're going to choose a project from our list, the link is on the slide up here, the mentor who will be supporting that project is always listed on the description page, and you can get in contact with them, or you can get in contact with me and I can make those introductions for you. If you're going to choose a project of your own, which you can do as long as it leverages HPCC Systems in some way, then get in contact with me and I'll find someone on the team who has experience or expertise within your chosen field who can help support you while you're crafting your proposal and thinking about the tasks that might be involved in that. This is also true if there are any professors listening or any colleagues who know of people who might like to apply. If you just pass on my contact details, then I'd be happy to fill you in with information about how the program works. And in fact, you can see on the second line of the slide here, there's a link there to a blog which does just that. It basically walks you through the entire process, tells you a little bit about the experience, what you can expect, how to go about putting the right information onto your proposal, and there's an example proposal link within that blog that you can get to so you can see what a good proposal looks like. If you want to know a little bit more about the experience of students who've worked on the program in the past, then you can look at the previously completed projects. There are lists of projects in there going back to 2015 when the program first started and when we also entered into the Google Summer of Code program that year as well for the first time. There's a whole student wiki that has a wealth of information in there to help support you while you're trying to work out whether or not you want to apply, the sort of project you'd like to apply for. And you can find more information in there about getting information about HPCC Systems itself, as well as links to the source code so you can go and have a look on there. Various resources on the website that give you information about HPCC Systems and how it works. And if you have any questions at all about the program, or you just want to have a conversation about a prospective project you'd like to work on, just drop me an email. I'm very happy to help in any way that I can. And anyone who is thinking of applying, I wish you good luck, and I look forward to seeing the proposals coming in.
All right. And Lorraine, just really quick, this is open to all different levels, correct? You're not just looking for graduate students or anything like that, correct?
That's true. In fact, we have had high school students on the program for the previous 2 years. So it's open from high school all the way through to PhD. So yes, basically for the full range of people in the academic spectrum.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. All right, so we're going to wrap things up for today. We've had 2 fantastic presentations. So if you would like to submit a talk for an upcoming episode, we would really like to have you. If you have a success story you'd like to share, or a new use case, or maybe even a new application that you want to demo for us, we're always open to helpful ECL tips, sample codes. Just reach out to us, techtalks@hpccsystems.com, and please do visit the Tech Talks Wiki, which is on our website. after the show, and you can get all of the details as well as information on all of our past Tech Talks. We've got something here taking episode 28 on the road, so sorry guys, that one's done. But we hope that you'll go out and look at the Community Day information. Trish gave us a wonderful wrap-up, and you can go out and see those presentations on our YouTube site. So thank you all very much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.